Anyone remember this game, Shadow Fight 2? Today I'm going to be explaining the full lore of this game, so here is the opening cutscene.
Once I was a great, invincible warrior, and no one dared to stand in my way. I traveled the land searching for a worthy battle, until I discovered the gates of shadows. I broke the laws of the elders and opened the gates. The demons of the other world were beyond them. They rushed upon me, tearing my flesh, draining my soul, turning me into a shadow. And now, for eternity, I am doomed to wander the world and fight the demons I freed.
After losing his body, Shadow returns to his native village where his sensei also resides. Sensei mocks him for being vain and blames his arrogance and brashness for his current predicament. He decides to test Shadow to see what remains of his combat abilities. Sensei tells Shadow to fight Kenji, another student of his. Shadow defeats Kenji and wins. Sensei is really impressed and suggests that he should challenge Lynx for his seal. Lynx doesn't take Shadow as a threat and he says he does not want to waste time fighting Shadow. He gives his weakest apprentice, Shin, and he says if you can defeat Shin, you can have the honor of fighting me. Then Shadow fights Shin and wins, but Lynx broke his promise and still does not fight him. He says he's not worthy enough. Finally, Act 1 Hero Reborn starts. One of the most important characters in this game, Mei, finally comes in, and she asks to work for Shadow, which he says yes. Slowly, Shadow defeats all of Lynx's bodyguards, and the last one says that Lynx will not be easy. Shadow challenged Lynx to a fight, and Shadow won the challenge. Shadow gets the blue seal from Lynx. This means he needs 5 more seals. After, Sensei remarks that his apprentice is missing, and he went to the schools in the next town. Now, Act 2 Secret Path begins when they're trying to look for the apprentice. When they reach the town, Sensei proclaims that the town was known for its fighting schools, and however this town is in distress and is in ruins. They ask a person named Dragon for help, however he just says that they're there for Hermit's competition. Dragon said they should fight and Shadow accepts. He says he's the only worthy one of Hermit's teachings. They fight and Shadow quickly defeats Dragon. He says that the Hermit came here with nothing and built one of the best schools. Shadow eventually comes across one of Hermit's bodyguards again, and this time Buffalo. Buffalo says that Hermit has a great amount of power, and he wants to know this secret knowledge. But what power does Hermit have? After beating Buffalo, Shadow comes across another character. His name is Sly, and he asks Shadow if he could work for him for a price. Shadow accepts. After defeating Mantis, another bodyguard of Hermit's, Mantis warns that he has magic. But what is this magic? What magic is he talking about? Well, it turns out magic is one of Hermit's great secret, and he warns that magic should not be used. Later, Shadow finds Crane, the person that they're looking for all along, Sensei's old apprentice, and Crane decides to fight Shadow, and Shadow accepts the fight. After Crane loses, Sensei is very disappointed in Crane and mocks him. Shadow finally finds Hermit, and they both agree to a fight. Shadow quickly wins against Hermit and beats him. Hermit is very impressed by Shadow and says he will share a secret if he does a task in return. Shadow has to kill a nearby gang leader named Butcher, who threatens him of his magic. Hermit gives Shadow the green seal, and Sensei is very impressed with Shadow and allows him to use the magic. Now Act 3 Trail of Blood begins with them looking to kill the nearby gang leader. It begins with a woman who introduces herself as Bird. She welcomes them to the town. However, it seems awfully strange that a random girl will walk up to them alone at night, and they have a bad feeling about this. Bird led them to her favorite part of town. However, it was a trap. Bird fought Shadow, and Shadow won. After Shadow wins against Bird, random dude showed up called Rhino. He's mad at Shadow for hurting Bird. Shadow and Rhino fought, and Shadow won. After, Rhino begs for mercy. He says something about Butcher not knowing about their relationship, and we get the influence that he works for Butcher. After Shadow defeats a couple of Butcher's bodyguards, he learns that Butcher has been misleading and using children to build his own private army. After a few more bodyguards, Shadow finally reaches Butcher. Butcher taunts him and says he'll teach him a different lesson, and they both fight and Shadow of course wins. And Butcher gave the red seal to Shadow. Act 4. Pirate Throne. Everyone doesn't know a lot about this place except Sly. Sly has been here a couple of times. He said long time ago there was a pirate king who disappeared, and his daughter Wasp took over and now controls this harbor. He says that Wasp will not be easy to get to, and she's had some trouble recently and has got into hiding. Later, one of Wasp's bodyguard, Cleaver, finds it really suspicious that the Pirate King disappears without even a trace, and Wasp takes over. He said that Wasp had something to do with it, and this implies that Wasp is a cruel and evil person. After a lot of bodyguards later, we finally meet Wasp. She's thankful to Shadow because she had a problem. She did not have absolute power, and thanks to Shadow defeating all the bodyguards, she now has absolute power. Shadow and Wasp fight each other, and Shadow wins. Wasp is confused. She said if she has done everything that Widow told her to do, everyone would kneel to her, and Widow is a new character who maybe has an ex-seal. Widow told her to betray her father, and this confirms that Wasp betrayed his father and probably killed him. Subsequently, Wasp gave Shadow the purple seal. Sensei and Mei agree that Widow is a worthy opponent, and they decide to go on their journey to Widow. Act 5. The Greatest Temptation. This begins with them looking for Widow. As Act 5 begins, they meet Widow. Widow calls Shadow an interesting specimen, and she's met so many boring and average men, but there was something peculiar about Shadow, and she said she'll keep her eye out on him. They all agreed that Widow was the one Wasp was talking about, and something bothered them, but what, they are not sure. Here's a compilation of people going nuts for Widow, and you can pause at each frame or each second or whatever to see all the, people. From this we can conclude that Widow put a spell on them, and it's even confirmed in the later pictures of this compilation that Widow put a spell on her, and this means they'll do anything, literally anything for Widow to gain her love, so that's a win for Widow. After defeating all the bodyguards, we finally get the honor to meet Widow again, and she doesn't take Shadow as much of a threat, and she says she'll add him to his collection, and they both fight. And guess who wins? Of course, it's Shadow. She asks Shadow, how does it feel to defeat a woman? And she says, you have no idea how quickly their power will tear you apart. Who is they? We'll discover later. Shadow gets the orange shield from Widow. Act 6. Iron Rain. They have been traveling for days, but there's no sign of life. No people, no animals, no trees, nothing but a huge wasteland. Soon they discover a glow in Ivory City. However, it's burning, and it's supposed to be full of people. They conclude that this fire is not natural, and that this realm belongs to the Shadows. Sensei said it's full of trickery and illusion. After Shadow defeated the first bodyguard, the bodyguard called him Prince. What prince is he talking about? Then he called another person named Captain to prove that there was some prince. After, Shadow and Captain fight, and of course Shadow wins. Captain begs for mercy and calls him Prince. Sensei says it's obviously a case of mistaken identity and they all fear him. So now we know Prince is very feared upon. After defeating one of Shogun's bodyguards, the bodyguard said that Shogun claimed you were killed by traitors, and of course he is referring to Prince. And he says he executed these so-called conspirators without a trial. Then Shogun seized power. After defeating the second to last bodyguard, he claims that Shogun knows someone is pretending to be Prince, and whatever that person is trying to do, he will stop him. Shogun sends a bunch of mercenaries to kill the so-called Prince. After defeating all the mercenaries, we finally get to meet Shogun ourselves. Shogun said, "What took you so long?" So it must mean that Shogun kind of knew Prince was eventually gonna come. He said, "You're only a shadow of the Prince I knew." Shadow and Shogun fight, and of course Shadow wins. Shogun is just really surprised that Shadow was able to defeat him. Shadow gets the Jade Seal from Shogun. Do y'all remember about this guy, Prince? He's not in this storyline, he's in the Shadow Fight Special Edition storyline, so maybe I'll cover him in a different video. Now Shadow's all 6 seals. All he has to do is open the gates to get his flesh back. Or so we think. We are unexpectedly greeted by all 6 bosses in the previous chapters, and now we have to defeat them 6 in a row. After defeating all 6 of them, Shogun says we were the strongest warriors who ever lived, and yet we failed to defeat you. Everyone is surprised of how strong Shadow is, except Widow. She for some reason still wants to fight Shadow in the future, and even I'm not sure why. They finally reach the gates of Shadow after all this time. However, the sight is hard to bear, and Shadow is missing one thing to open it. Shadow is missing flesh and bone, and those who have flesh and bone can only open the gates of Shadow. Mei agrees to open the door, and she does. After, the game presents a short cutscene that I'm about to show right now. To save Mei, they must open the gates of Shadow once again. They soon discover the seals have to do something with their owner, so they have to revisit each owner and break the seal. Now the story begins with them going to the owners of each seal. We discover that we cannot use our gold anymore. Now we have to use platinum coins. After defeating all of Lynx's bodyguards again, he finally gets to take the chance to defeat Lynx again to break his seal. After defeating Lynx, Lynx says, "I still hear Titan's voices inside my head. You don't understand the power you're dealing with. You've doomed us all." After reaching Hermit's town, Hermit says, "Everyone was so afraid of my magic, but there are far more powerful forces at work here, and he's probably referring to Titan. Things we don't understand, but we know they should be feared." After defeating every one of Hermit's bodyguards and Hermit himself, Hermit says, "Do not think you can fully comprehend Titan's powers. He can change one's thoughts, feelings, and memories. Perhaps he's talking about mind control here." After the crew reaches Butcher's town, Butcher says, "You think I'm the monster? You haven't seen what Titan does to his enemies. I have, and it sickens even me. Somehow, Titan does something worse than killing his enemies. What could that be?" After finally defeating Titan and his bodyguards, Butcher says, "Why do you persist? No one wants you to open the gates. Someone will be strong enough to stop you." So everyone does not want Shadow to open the gates of Shadow, perhaps because there's a threat behind the doors. Maybe Titan? After reaching Wasp Town, Wasp says no one knows where Titan came from, and just that he is different, and he creates strange things to serve him. After defeating all her bodyguards and Wasp herself, Wasp says, "Believe me, you do not want to see what lies beyond the gates. Forget your friend. It's not too late to turn back." After reaching Widow's town, Widow reveals that Titan has minions, and no one is ever prepared enough. After defeating all of Widow's bodyguards and herself, Widow says Titan's been leading you from the very beginning, pulling your strings like a puppet master. Even now you do what he wishes. After reaching Shogun's town, Shogun refuses to let go of his throne, and he does not want to allow Shadow to take it from him. Then, after defeating Shogun's bodyguards and himself, of course, Shogun says, "Why do you hasten your own demise? Leave now and enjoy what little time your world has left before Titan destroys you all." Now that he has all the experience and tools, he is finally ready to open the gates of Shadow once again to save Mei. Now begins Act 7, Chapter 1, and as soon as they enter the other side of the gate, they meet someone named Shroud, who makes them put their weapons down, and apparently Titan is already waiting for their arrival. Shadow denies to put his weapon down and fights Shroud, but as soon as Shadow is about to be killed, someone interrupted them and saved Shadow. This person was named Kali. Kali said, "Glad I made it in time. Get up. We must leave quickly. Shroud will not stay unconscious for long." After, Kali brought Shadow to a safe place, and there was a man named Cypher. He says, "Who have you brought here, Kali? Did you forget we're in hiding?" Apparently, even going through the gates of Shadow and still being alive is a miracle, so that's why Kali saved Shadow. And Shroud, one of Titan's best fighter, was sent to get Shadow back to Titan. And if one of his best fighters comes to get Shadow, that means Shadow is quite important to Titan. And since Shadow is important to Titan, he's also important to Cypher and Kali. So Cypher lets Shadow stay here and rest. Kali discovers that Shadow has a different type of currency, the platinum coins. However, here, they don't use platinum coins, they use something else. So now he has nothing, but Kali is nice enough to give some. Kali says all the enemies you meet here are heroes from other places, and they found themselves stuck here after Titan destroyed their world and added them to his domain over here. However, Cypher managed to control them under his command, but they're still difficult to deal with, and Shadow has to gain their respect. It is also revealed that many people like Shadow have tried to stop Titan, but Titan always conquered in the end. Shadow goes to a looter's camp to find materials that could be useful, however it is heavily guarded, and Shadow managed to defeat all the guards. Cypher randomly reveals that Shroud was also once a champion, and Shroud once lost, and he was compromised along with his consciousness, but Titan spared his life and made a slave out of him. Cypher also says that Shadow doesn't understand what he's dealing with. Titan is a monster, a parasite for whom living itself means nothing. The fight with Titan will happen no matter what, but Shadow has to train a lot more, and Cypher tests his strength. Shadow and Cypher both fight, and Shadow wins against Cypher. After Cypher loses, Cypher says there is an ancient tribe that lived here before Titan, and when Titan came, Titan ended their lives, and he ordered destruction. However, one ancient managed to escape and hide from Titan, and Cypher tried to use Kronos, one of his inventions, to find Ancient. However, Ancient is powerful. He managed to wipe Kronos' memory, replacing it with an idea to cleanse this world of all vices, and he's likely, hiding near one of Titan's factories. They eventually agree that finding Kronos is their best chance to find the Ancient One, so they head on their journey to find Kronos. Once they eventually find Kronos, Kronos is completely mind-controlled by Ancient, and Kronos challenges Shadow to a fight. Shadow beats Kronos and switches him off, and when they check Kronos' memory chip, it turns out the Ancient is at the Stone Grove, which is a real tomb. But once they reached the Stone Grove, it turned out to be a trap. Shroud was there waiting for Shadow to arrive, and settle some unfinished business. Act 8, Chapter 2. However, it was not Shroud, it was actually Ancient, the person they've been looking for all along, and it turns out Ancient can take any form, including Shroud. However, when they asked for help, Ancient denied, saying no one shall see Titan. This is because, as time passed, he saw many people try to beat Titan. However, in the end, they always lost, and he does not want history to repeat itself over and over again. Uninterested in Shadow, he shows other people who have tried to beat Titan, and Shadow has to beat all of them to gain his trust. Then Cypher tells Shadow that there's someone else who wants to spar against Shadow, and he will spar when he gets to the hideout. After beating every single one of these previous warriors who try to beat Titan, the Ancient is finally impressed. But he still doesn't want Shadow fighting Titan, and he tells to forget about Titan, and he should hide. Shadow of course refuses, and Ancient tries to stop Shadow from going to Titan, and they both fight. Shadow wins, and Ancient impressed by Shadow, and even Shroud could not beat Ancient. They once again ask for help, but Ancient still refuses, saying he's never believed in anything since a long time. After everything with Ancient, he still can't be near Titan, and nothing came from it. So Cypher devised a plan. Titan's men are holding a competition at the incubator, so maybe Shadow could participate in it. The winner of this tournament will be promoted to Commander, and the ceremony will be held at Titan's Citadel, so it's a chance for him to get close to Titan. After defeating a few people in the tournament, Cypher got new intel. It looks like Shroud is completely out of control. To solve this problem, Titan is sending one of his retainers called Justice, and he wants to bring Shroud to his senses, and there was a message intercepted between Shroud and Justice. The message started off with Justice saying something. "Attention all units, everyone who gets visual contact on Shroud, report immediately. Do not approach him, he's extremely dangerous. Shroud's response to that is, don't even try. Friend or foe, I'll crush everyone who stands between me and my prey. Justice's response was, Shroud, Titan has personally ordered me to take Shadow alive. You must cooperate. Shroud's response to that was, I know Titan's will, what he truly wants. Shadow dies by my hands. You shall not stop me. Shroud's plan to kill Shadow has taken a step further. Cypher's hideout is completely compromised by Shroud. Shroud eventually finds Shadow. Shroud and Shadow both fight, and Shadow wins. Shroud's punishment is to be taken to the incubator's feeding tube, and to be served as nutrients for Titan's new generation of the military. The game is coming to an end. This is the final chapter of the whole game. Act 7, Chapter 3. We finally see Mei, completely mind-washed by Titan. As long as Titan holds a grip on her mind, she will be mind-controlled. So they go back to Plan A, where Titan goes to the Citadel, being disguised as one of Titan's soldiers. Once they reach the Citadel, there are scavengers roaming around. Titan runs horrible experiments on these so-called scavengers, and they're basically his prisoners, and he drives them with mad pain, and then he throws them away at the Citadel when he no longer needs them. The scavengers end up attacking Shadow and Kali, and they talk about something called pure shadow energy. Kali, of course, being confused, he asks Cypher what pure shadow energy is. Cypher says he understands Titan's true motives now. Apparently when Shadow opened the gates of Shadow, he got a new body. A body formed of shadow energy. Shadow energy is a capsule made of pure energy. If Titan beats Shadow, he'll get Shadow's shadow energy, and if that happens, the world will just be reduced to ashes. Kali said they shouldn't fear, and as long as they keep Mei under guard, they shouldn't have a problem entering the Citadel, so they enter the Citadel. But this disguise could not fool Titan himself. Titan noticed the huge amount of shadow energy coming from Shadow's body, and went to Shadow. After opening the gates of Shadow, you're most likely not to retain your mind and will. But Shadow did, and he even survived the most powerful shadow energy emission. And he's frankly Titan's crowning glory. But he does not want to fight Shadow yet. He wants Shadow to fight people who also passed the gates of Shadow and survived also known as his current bodyguards. Titan said these bodyguards were just like Shadow, except they did not retain their will. But Shadow, of course, did retain his will. After we meet the first bodyguard, Assassin. It is revealed that Assassin took over Lynx's order and even beat Lynx. Shadow fights Assassin and wins, and Shadow did not kill Assassin, and if you notice, Shadow never kills any of his opponents. Then comes Titan's next bodyguard, Master. Just like Assassin defeated Lynx and took over his order, he did the same but to Hermit. Master defeated Hermit and took over his order. Then Shadow and Master both fight, and Shadow wins. After comes Titan's next bodyguard, Guru. Guru's surprised that Shadow is not scared of him, and he says he is more brave than Shadow. He also defeated Butcher and took over his order, and he also took Butcher's kids and led them through a path of death. Then they proceed to fight, and guess who wins? Of course it's Shadow. He then proceeds to ask Shadow to work with him, but Shadow of course denies. Then comes Titan's next two bodyguards, and I fast forwarded it because I don't think it's too important, and you can pause at each picture to read it and see it, and yeah. Titan is very surprised by Shadow's skill, and he surpassed Titan's expectations. Remember in the beginning of the game, where Shadow lost his body and became a shadow? Well, this granted him the power to cross between worlds, for example crossing the gates of Shadow, and if Titan beats Shadow, he will get the power. And if Titan gets this power, the world is good as dead. And before things could get even worse, Mei appears, and apparently she killed all the guards that were keeping her. She also somehow brought Cypher, and Cypher is not weak, so she had to have defeated Cypher, which is very hard. And that means this mind-controlled Mei is very strong. And now Shadow has to fight Mei, but this is harder than you think, because Mei already knows all of Shadow's moves, and Shadow doesn't know anything about this new Mei. And despite all odds, Shadow clutches it up and he beats Mei. And after beating Mei, she eventually loses her mind control, and she's very confused. Cypher tells Mei to go back to the gates and get safety, but Mei does not want to because she is very worried and she's always been with Shadow. But eventually she does listen and goes back to the gates to find safety. And finally we get back to Titan, and he said the world's fate is already decided, and he is destined to become the empire of this world. and he said he would let Shadow leave and see the end of this world. And this is where the whole game leads to: Shadow versus Titan. And I want you to look at the size of Titan. He's literally 2 times the size of Shadow, so I wonder who will win. Actually, I don't wonder who wins, because you know who always wins? Shadow. Shadow was able to beat Titan, and here is the ending cutscene. If you like this video, please just do these 3 things: like, subscribe, and comment down something in the comment section below. Thank you, and bye.